So, your mum was a dinner lady. Do you class yourself as working class?
Do you know, Gloria, I've never thought of myself as any particular class. I suppose if I had to say anything, I probably would say that, because my family didn't come from particularly wealthy backgrounds. My mother was a dinner lady, my dad was a tailor, and he was an officer in the Royal Air Force in the Second World War. So we're just an ordinary family, really. So I don't really categorise myself.
You know, you say you were ordinary, but you joined the Conservative Party at 14. That's not ordinary.
It's not, no. Politics always fascinated me. I always used to watch the news, even when I was like 10, 11. Didn't understand it, but something about it fascinated me. And I think it probably goes back to the Queen's Silver Jubilee in '77, when my parents took me to London and I stood in Fleet Street and I saw the Queen and the royal family, and something inside me made me feel deeply patriotic. And since then, I've always, really, my involvement in politics is more about love of country. And I think that's where it all stemmed from. And so I joined the party that I thought was the closest to my views. And I know I was 14, a bit young to get involved in politics, but I don't regret it. It was a great decision to make.
Are there periods that you have been an MP when you have questioned how conservative or how close to the Conservative tradition your party has been?
There are times. The Conservative Party, like a lot of political parties, but particularly my party, it seems to change, it evolves. It doesn't stick to one particular philosophy. I think it's a good thing to be pragmatic, but there are times when I wonder to myself, are we actually really conservative? Are we doing the things that I truly believe in? But I've never questioned my membership of the Conservative Party, even during the period when the Conservative Party were doing things that I really didn't like, particularly in being very pro the European Union. At certain stages it was, and even then I never questioned. I always thought we should stay in the party and fight for the kind of future that we wanted. But there are things I don't agree with, and I'm independently minded. I don't just read from the script, and I think we need more MPs that are like that, really.
You're a whip's nightmare, aren't you?
Do you know what? I think I am sometimes, but not always. I was actually a whip, believe it or not.
True.
For 2 years, they made me a whip. And I think the whips have an important role to play, because it's about managing the parliamentary party. You have to win votes to get legislation through, and it's about managing things and making sure things work well. But there are times when I'm a nightmare, but they know that if I believe in something, I don't give in, I stand by it. And so they do, I think they sort of respect the fact that if I make a clear stand, they're not going to be able to buy me off.
And you talked about there being periods, you've never questioned your membership of the Conservative Party or anything like that, but there have been periods where you've questioned whether this is really conservative in its nature. Has there been a particular leader or period when you think, yeah, that period was a bit odd for me?
Well, I was very upset when Mrs. Thatcher was removed from office. I thought, I know some people wouldn't agree with everything she stood for, but she was someone of principle, and she loved this country, and she wanted the best for the country, and she didn't care about being popular. She was there to do the job of being Prime Minister. So very unhappy then, and I was very unhappy at the drift that then followed under really John Major. We drifted, we then lost the election massively, and I felt disappointed a little bit in David Cameron. I thought he would be somebody that would take us forward, and he didn't really quite do it, did he? Let's be honest about it. And so we haven't really had the kind of Prime Minister. We've had good leaders. Michael Howard, I think, was a very good leader, but he never became Prime Minister. I actually think that Boris is my favourite leader since Margaret Thatcher.
He'll be pleased to hear that, particularly in light of recent events. You mentioned the Queen's Silver Jubilee. You're a big believer in the royal family. Why?
I think the royal family and the Queen, the monarchy, is above politics. We can disagree on political issues. We can have different religions, different backgrounds. Everything can divide us. The one thing that should never divide us is love of country. And the Queen has been a magnificent servant, not only of the United Kingdom, but of the Commonwealth. And I think that politics shouldn't be just about politicians. A political system, a constitution, you sometimes need someone above politics. And in this country, we have someone who's above all of it and does the job so well. And it's also a constitutional thing, because at the end of the day, if you have somebody that is neutral politically, They can bind the country together through times of crisis and difficult periods, but also people don't dislike them. I mean, I know huge numbers of people in all political parties, especially in the Labour Party, who deeply patriotic and love the Queen. Not everybody is woke in the Labour Party, lots that aren't. Sadly, there are some that are. I know you're not, Gloria, but there are some that are. And I think it's very sad because we can differ on, how much public spending and other environmental issues or whatever it might be. But the one thing I think should unite most people is love of country, and the Queen's sort of like the head of the British family. So I think the monarchy is a good thing.
Were you sad when Harry and Meghan left?
I was very disappointed because when they got married, it was a wonderful royal wedding and the nation celebrated for them. I don't understand what's happened. I really think Harry was a fantastic member of the royal family. He's so popular. And, he really chimed with everybody. He was out there. People loved him. People adored him, actually. And yet for him to, I don't know what's happened. He seems to have been taken away from the royal family. And I really think it's very sad. But they've made that decision. And now they've made that decision, they've got to accept the consequences of that. You can't be half in and half out of the royal family. So whilst they're still members of the Queen's family, I think they've chosen to opt out of their royal duties. And therefore, they have to now live as ordinary citizens.
And being such a proud monarchist as you are, the Prince Andrew affair must have been very difficult for anybody who believes in the royal family.
I don't know what's gone on there. Clearly, it's very difficult and it's very upsetting for the Queen, especially in this year of the Queen's Jubilee. I want this year to be a wonderful year for the Queen. She deserves a fantastic celebration, and this is a distraction which the Queen didn't need. The country doesn't need it. So it is a private matter, really, for Prince Andrew to resolve, and I really hope it can be resolved very quickly because I want to celebrate a wonderful year for the Queen as she reaches 70 years on the throne, and I think that's something we should be focusing on rather than issues such as the problems that Prince Andrew is facing.
Animal welfare is something that you're really passionate about. Why?
I just love animals, really love them. I mean, I wouldn't say I'm obsessed because I'm realistic. Sometimes animals do need to be controlled a little bit sometimes, so I'm not completely all fluffy about animals, but I do love them and I want the best for them. I think we have a duty of care to all animals, whether it be domestic pets or animals in the wild, farm animals. I think we can do better than we've done in recent years, and that's why I'm promoting, have done for a long time, animal welfare in Parliament and new legislation in Parliament. I was Shadow Minister for Animal Welfare under David Cameron, and I did that job with passion. So I think we share this planet with the animal kingdom. We are not the only creatures that live on this planet. We share it with so many other different species, but we're in a privileged position. We control so much. So what we do affects the living world and the animal kingdom, and therefore I think we've got a duty towards them to make their lives the best possible it can be. And also conservation. So many animals become extinct, and I think we can do a lot more to protect the natural habitats to ensure that we don't lose any more of the magnificent animals that we're so privileged to share the world with.
If there was one law that you could introduce on animal welfare, I'm sure there are many, but if there's one priority which you could put on the statute book tomorrow, what would it be? Well,
funny enough, I'm promoting something at the moment. I've got a bill before Parliament, which I'm hoping does become law. It's actually reaching its final stages through the Commons, and that is to make it easier to fine people who do things that are cruel to animals or neglect the animals. It's fixed penalty notices. When you get a parking ticket, you get a fixed penalty. At the moment, you can't do that if you neglect an animal, and sometimes a fixed penalty is better than taking someone to court if it's a minor offence or just a small thing that they've perhaps not done as they should. So my bill that's going through Parliament will make it so much easier to enforce a whole range of animal welfare laws. So I'm already onto it, Gloria.
Tell me about the political nature of your seat. When did you win that seat for the Conservatives?
Ooh, right, so I won in 2001. It was the first Conservative gain, biggest swing to the Conservatives in the country in 2001. Mrs Thatcher came and campaigned for me 2 days before, and we were on the world's media. It was fantastic. It was a great election victory. Of course, it was the election that Conservatives were decimated in the second election, Tony
Yes,
Blair's second victory.
That's right, yes.
So they didn't expect really to lose any seats, but my seat was an unusual result on the night. But I think it's not just because the Conservatives were particularly popular in my seat, because Labour had won it the time before. I think that I'm a little bit different than a lot of MPs. I am genuinely local. I'm from Romford. I was born there. I went to school there. I've lived there all my life. And I think that you'll understand that, having been an MP, that if you're from a constituency and you chime with the area, you go with the grain of the local community, I think that more people take to you and support you than if you're just a parachuted in candidate from central office, which I never was. And central office they've never put the strings on me. I've always been my own man in my own constituency. And therefore, I think winning that seat was a great victory, not just for the party, but also for the local area, that they wanted a local person to be their representative in the House of Commons.
And finally, you're a big Brexiteer. You are sat there with your Union Jack badge on. Some people stereotype big Brexiteers as people who do not care about any other country outside of Britain, sometimes even England. Are you an internationalist?
It's a fantastic question. I'm so glad you've asked that, because you couldn't get more of an internationalist than me. I have literally travelled around the world. I've helped people in countries around the world. I take huge interest in the Commonwealth, in the British Overseas Territories, and indeed with Europe. When the Berlin Wall came down in 1990, I set up a freedom training programme for young people around Europe to help them into democracy, to give them opportunities to learn about actually what is democracy, how does it work, how do political parties function. So I've always been a great internationalist. I fly the flag for Britain when I'm abroad, as I do today, but I love the fact that nations are all different. And I don't want everything to be, all conformity. I think actually having different nations with different cultures, traditions, languages, we should all get on well and be good to each other, be kind, respect difference. So I'm a big internationalist. I've been on the Foreign Affairs Committee the longest of any current Member of Parliament. I'm very proud of that. And I chair several all-party groups on different countries. So I think Britain's success is that we do reach out to the whole world, and we are an international country, and that's why global Britain very much fits with my beliefs.
Andrew Rosindell, upbeat, honest, interesting. Thank you.
Thank you.